Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Management Talk. I'm your host, Justin Eskenazi. Now, as we approach the holidays and given the current, let's call it news landscape, there's a lot of uneasy feelings, a lot of stress out there. And certainly in an industry like legal, there's always plenty of stress to go around. And that can have an impact on mental health. And you want to make sure, especially around this time of year, that we're focusing on taking care of our mental health and ways as a firm that we can address that. And that's where our guest today comes in. He is Jonathan Baum. He's a practicing lawyer and also the founder of Avenir Guild, which provides community and resources to lawyers at different stages of their careers. So thanks for being here, Jonathan. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Justin, for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, as we talk about mental health in the legal industry and making sure that there is a focus on mental wellness, what are some of the things that you've seen in law firms that really can be pretty problematic?
Well, let's start with what's good. So
Sure.
I think starting with what's really good is the fact, as your introduction stated, is that there is a renewed interest in the well-being of lawyers, be they in in-house departments or in firms of any size. And it's been somewhat cyclical. If you do a little bit of research, you'll see that we go in and out of interest on the subject, but it seems to be at a fairly high level now. For a number of reasons. It may be that the whole conversation around mental health has become easier over time, regardless of whether it's in our profession or outside. I just had a conversation this morning with someone who said, it's gone from we never talk about this to we talk about it maybe too much. But so I think the fact that we're even having a conversation is a huge improvement and boon and opportunity. And I'm sure that anyone who follows the news in the profession has noted a few unfortunate high-profile suicides in the UK last fall and here in the US as well within the profession. And I think the profession has, when I speak about the profession, I mean what you read about in ALM and in various journals, organizations like the Institute for Wellbeing in Law, a new group out of London called the Mindfulness Business Charter. There's a number of organizations out there that have dedicated themselves to well-being and mental health in particular, the group out of London in particular, who have now come to the United States and are right now engaged in something of a membership drive here. And I think bar associations, including the ABA in the New York State, various groups, not just here on the East Coast, but throughout the country, have been dedicating resources to this. So I think that's really good news. What I find striking, though, and I've attended a number of conferences and read a lot of materials and, is that there seems to be little discussion about how we got here. So most of the conversation, most of the materials are what I consider palliative, helping us feel better. But there seems to be, at least, and I'd love to be wrong about this, little curiosity as to the environment that have created people who, a profession with high incidences of suicidality, drug abuse, divorce, all the things that we associate with, struggle. So, so the good news is that we're paying attention in a way that we haven't, to my knowledge, before. I think where we could improve the conversation is to talk about what are the drivers that cause lawyers to drink and drug too much, and that's what I thought, if you want, we could go over today is, what are those causes?
Yeah. So let's do that. What I'm sure there are so many things that go into it, but if you could highlight a couple of factors, what would they be that are really, really driving these issues?
I think that among the key drivers, and I think this will come as a surprise to no one, is the workload. The sheer number of billable hours that are now published expectations of many firms. And there's any number of research papers, I mean, extending from the ABA to ALM, did a study that respondents overwhelmingly point to the stress of workload, whether it's a billable hour requirement or, it doesn't, I think the billable hour is a bit of a red herring because even if you're operating in a fixed fee environment, it's all about productivity. And unfortunately, lawyers have become, revenue generating, I guess we always have been, but we are the sole generators of revenue in this business. And if you're a fixed cost by virtue of salary, but you're a variable revenue generator, I mean, the natural tendency will be to try to get as much billable hour or fixed fee out of an individual as you can manage.
Right.
So the pressure is there. I mean, I attended sort of a presentation a few weeks ago where the presenter was talking about, classic mindfulness techniques, ancient, really ancient techniques going back thousands of years into the yogic and Buddhist traditions. And she is a consultant to one of the big firms. I don't want to name which. So I split the screen and I had her on one side talking. And on the right side, I pulled up that firm's expectations for their associates. And it was something like 2,100 billable hours a year. And I'm thinking, you can meditate all you want.
Right.
It's if you can fit that into the day. It's not going to change your reality that if you don't make your billable hour quota, you're gone, or your prospects in the firm are really diminished. So it's that dichotomy that I think we need to be talking about. And I think one thing that we could talk about today as well, I mean, there's so much that it will go beyond the time we have today, is that I think there seems to be an implicit, not really discussed assumption that this is the way it has to be. And I just don't see that. I really don't understand the argument that we have to put in, 1,800, 2,100 hour billable hour years. There's nothing about our work that's inherently stressful. I mean, I'm not a litigator. Yes, you get hit with a TRO on a Friday afternoon that's returnable on Monday. I've been there when I was a summer associate. But I think those are rare. But as a corporate lawyer, as a finance lawyer, as a funds lawyer, I don't have emergencies. Even when my regulated clients get an audit letter from the SEC, we know it's common. We practice for it, we prepare for it. We usually have 5 days before the staff actually shows up. I mean, that's the closest I can think of as to anything that's really demands a high intensity output.
Yeah.
I would be willing to have this conversation with anyone. Tell me something that we do that requires, consistent 10, 11-hour days. Just don't see it.
So then I guess the question is, what is the solution? If it's not get off the billable hour or do a different fee structure, then, how do we change the mindset?
Yeah. Well, I think that's absolutely the right question. Because the business model today is try to squeeze as much revenue out of an individual as possible. And even if you're not an associate, assume you're, a so-called non-equity partner, meaning you're under a contractual relationship where, you'll be compensated depending on your own production, pretty much bare knuckle, eat what you kill lifestyle. I think that, and I know this is going to sound like a throwback to an idyllic golden era that may never have existed, but there was a time when law firms were much more collaborative. Fred had tax, Joe had securities, and Bobby really did a great lunch, meaning he was, the person who could really bring in the business. Now it's really gravitated towards rainmakers pretty much being the most sought after contributors to the firm. And you could argue without them, the firm wouldn't exist, which I don't want to go down that path. So I think one way to think about it is to make the argument that, and I know this will sound insane, but hey, why not?
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument to be made, and I think it's a compelling one, that reducing workloads, reducing billable hour, fit whatever compensation range, whatever the business model is, actually will improve profitability for a firm. And it's not me talking. You could look at OSHA, you could look at the World Health Organization. They've all published papers. There's an extraordinary, in-depth, multi-year study out of it's not the Canadian Bar Association. I'll get you the site if you want, where volume 3 of their report are all recommendations. And recommendation 1, the first one was to lose the billable hour requirement. But embedded in that report, but in WHO and OSHA, is the argument that I think the ratio that I've seen in the OSHA statement is that for every dollar of prevention, you actually save $4 in in cure, if you will, in managing the problem that you created. I think it's more complicated in law. I don't think we're really just talking about working in a machine shop where if you bring the audible levels down, you'll spend less on medical care. I don't think it's quite like that, but I don't think it's that far off. I mean, it's just common sense that we work with this, right? And we need rest. We need an environment in which that works well. And I think it's axiomatic that we just don't work that well when it's Thursday and it's our third day we've been working until midnight. I mean, the quality, I have a relative who's a farmer in central Michigan, a soybean farmer, and he said to my kids when they were little, nothing good happens after midnight, trying to control teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I would say the same thing for lawyers, that I don't think anything really good happens after midnight in our work product. So, what are we doing? So I think the business case that I would make to your listeners, to my colleagues, is that as painful as it might be, bringing in the billable hour requirements rather than pushing it out will actually improve certainly the well-being, health, mental health of your staff, of your working bee lawyers. It'll improve their work product. And as I spent, I don't know, a number of years of my career as a general counsel and consumer of legal services, we know, the client knows, I mean, that, when the quality of the work is not what it should be. So I think that we all have an interest in producing quality, effective work, and it's not going to happen at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah. I think there's, you see the parallel in the conversation around like the 4-day work week that's being, thought about in society writ large of, if we go to a 4-day work week, we're losing a day of work, but most of the data shows that you're gaining productivity and you're gaining employee satisfaction. And so I guess, what you're talking about would be the legal industry specific parallel to that kind of idea.
Yeah, I think that I don't know exactly what shape it will take. I don't know if it's a 4-day work week, but I think, yeah, we're talking about the same thing. The other point I would make is that sort of the knock-on effect of having our expectations, or work product expectations that are more in line with what a human being can do. It's a great recruitment tool.
Mm-hmm.
There's a so-called battle for the best, whatever that means, coming out of the T14 schools. And ALM is just, every day I get all these emails from American Lawyer about what the incoming class at Simpson is making, whatever. But even if they're making $250,000 an hour, if you do the math, it's about what a massage therapist makes. Just under $100 an hour. And it seems like a pretty crude recruitment tool just to throw cash at people. And imagine in contrast of a firm we're saying, we'll pay you less. We're not going to make the so-called going rate that Cravath and the other biggies are throwing at you. But we'll guarantee you really have 4 weeks of vacation. You really will have July 4 weekend. And you really will have a 15-hour max requirement. If you're here more than 1,500 hours, we're sending you home. And I think that would be very attractive. And you can turn it the other way. I don't know if a law firm would do this, but imagine marketing a law firm. I'm not a marketing person, obviously, which would tell clients the people working on your work are rested. They're thoughtful. They haven't been squeezed to a pulp. And take that last point a little bit further. I was at a conference a couple of months ago with this London group, and there was general counsel of a major bank, associate general counsel of a major bank. And I asked him one-on-one off, when he was away from the panel, I told him that I'd read his bank's ethical sourcing mandate, things they expect from their third-party service providers, which many companies have, whether they're Nike, which I think was a leader in the area years ago, where they talk about ethical sourcing, what they expect in vendors. So I asked him, do you think the law firms you retain would pass your ethical sourcing test? I know it was intended for, sweatshops in Central Asia. But let's talk about Park Avenue, New York, or whatever, wherever the firms. He started laughing, he knew the answer, And he said, well, they're being paid a lot more. And I said, oh, really? So we just put a price on a life? Is that what we're talking about here? I mean,
That's not the only factor.
It's not the only factor. I mean, he was too savvy a guy to take that bait. But, is there a number at which we're willing to buy a person's entire life? What are we talking about here?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's a few things so just to recap, I think it's wonderful that there's awareness. I think it's wonderful that resources are being made available to people, whether it's therapy, meditation, yoga, all these. I think there was a firm that had therapy dogs up a couple of months ago to spend the afternoon with their lawyers, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I know a big London firm sent gift packages to their associates with little sleep masks and lotions and everything like that. I think that's good too. But if they're not having enough time to go home and sleep, like what are they going to do with their themed eye, whatever those things are called?
the eye mask.
The eye mask.
Yes. Well, they're for the office while you're sitting there. You can catch a quick 20 minutes before you get back to work.
I must have missed the point entirely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's, if I could do anything in the conversation, is to stimulate this, is to get people asking, why are we working this way? And if somebody wants to take the other side of that, they should give me a call. I really want to hear the other side of that one.
Yeah. I mean, I talk a lot about work-life balance and everything. And I don't know, like you were saying on the client perspective, that like you can tell them you probably won't hear from the lawyer after, if you text them at 10 p.m. or email them at 10 p.m., you probably won't hear back until the morning. But between 9 and 5, 9 and 6, you're going to get really good work out of them, and they're going to accomplish everything you need.
Right. I mean, I used to have a client, I'm dating myself, of course, who insisted I carry a pager. This is when cell phones were not so good. And I didn't argue with him, but I said, look, there are no emergencies. He's an asset manager running, several $100 million, not quite $1 billion in assets under management. It's like, why are we doing this? He once texted me, I have a morning routine of I swim every morning really early right here. Texted me like 6:30 in the morning. And I'm saying, and I responded around 7, whenever. And I said, like, why? Like, what's up? You said, I just want to know I could reach you. It's like the leash thing, they pull on the leash.
Yeah, we're doing tests now.
So, yeah. So that's the conversation I'd like to see started. By all means, meditate, do yoga, have a puppy. Although if you're working those number of hours, I don't know who's going to take care of
It's
this.
time for puppies. Yeah.
So maybe we'll get complaints from the ASPCA. Anyway, that's what I would like to see. A critical, thoughtful conversation around the business model. It doesn't have to be this way. And I do believe, not for today, there are alternate business models that we could employ that address much of this. But that's not, I think that's beyond the scope of what we have time for, today.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd definitely be interested in talking more about that because the talk, you can talk the talk, but then you gotta walk the walk and turn something into action if you're really interested in making sure that your employees are satisfied, and which in turn will make your firm more attractive to clients and potential other employees. So it all comes full circle.
But I also think that there will be no change until the clients begin to take interest in the subject. I mean, there might be other agents of change, but clients are going to be the most hopefully, I think they would be the most powerful agents of change. If a client told a law firm, we don't want the people on our matters working 2,100-hour years, that would be powerful.
Mm-hmm. So then, well, with the little bit of time we have left, I guess then, and we're talking to firms, is that something that they should nudge their clients about? Because how do you, the clients might not think up of that on their own. Is that something that firms should bring up of, hey, we're thinking about this kind of mindset shift, and this is how it'll benefit both of us? Is that a conversation worth having?
Yeah, I mean, if a law firm has the courage to have that conversation, and the courage isn't that the client's going to say, "Oh my God, no, I really want your people working 2,000-hour years." That's not what they're going to hear back. The courage element in that conversation is whether the law firm leadership is willing to risk immediate profitability, because it's just pure math. If I have a guy that I'm paying $250 to who's producing 1.3 in gross revenues, I mean that's a great business model, right? I get 4x 5x out of a guy. Like, what are you talking about? If I start reducing the number of hours he's working, my multiple will go down. I think that's where law firm leadership is going to struggle with what I'm saying, because they're going to view it as an attack on profitability. And I guess there's a couple of answers to that. One is profitability at what cost? And the other question is it truly going to be an adverse to profitability? Is there a market? Things we've just covered in our past few months.
Yeah.
Will clients find it appealing? Maybe you charge a different rate for a lawyer who's working at 3 a.m. and one who's working at 3 p.m. I'm just joking. I think that'd be a terrible idea. But I mean,
in theory.
Yeah. In theory, right. Do you want your associate to be awake or partially awake? How much stress? I'm sorry, I could go on. I've been working at, I've been doing this for so long. I've just seen so many meltdowns, so much, poor work, and it's coming out of smart people. And they're just working too hard, too fast, with somebody sitting on their head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my hope for the profession, is that we can do better for ourselves, for our clients. We're human beings. We have families, we want to be in this world for something other than, the work product,
Right. Yeah. I think it's a good call to action to leave off on. So thanks again for being here, Jonathan. Really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully we'll get to continue it sometime soon.
Great. And again, thank you, Justin. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you to our viewers, listeners, and subscribers for tuning in. Please be sure to give us a like on YouTube, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And you can learn more about ALA at alanet.org. Until next time.